So we are now pleased to introduce you to Scott Wagner, a long career in law enforcement, and writer, reviewer, tactician, and master of the revolver.
I don't know if I'd say master. I'm fairly good with it, though. It's my favorite shooting tool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Except you're not carrying one.
Oh, see, now you told on me.
He has an interesting gun. Maybe you could just sort of give us a little peek there.
Well, I'm carrying a Bond Arms Bullpup 9.
Yep.
And very slick little handgun, 9mm, 8-round capacity. And I did that because I would have carried revolver. I didn't want to have any chance of mixing live revolver ammo anywhere where I was doing the training today in the training class. And so I brought this down instead.
Yeah.
But it's very comfortable to carry.
I've had my hands on those, and it's a fascinating design. The
it is.
Boberg design, and it's. Have you found it to be completely reliable for you? As long as you're not using blazer brass, I think is the one it doesn't like.
There's a couple of rounds of ammunition it doesn't like. Yep. And one of the main keys to reliability is, of course, using what's on the list, but also watching your weapons handling. For example, it's critical with the Bond that you retract the slide all the way back till it stops and let it slam forcefully forward because of the different positioning where the chamber is, and it needs that full length of travel to really get in battery and be ready to go.
Yep, cool. Well, we didn't come here to talk about the Bullpup 9, but really want to pick Scott's brain, particularly on the one thing that we don't talk I think enough about is this idea of carrying, the old school revolver in this day and age. And I think we're starting to see a resurgence somewhat of the revolvers. I see, maybe not a ton, but I definitely do see more people talking about revolvers, talking about carrying revolvers, referring to their revolvers. We know the revolver is a reliable, trustworthy, age-old design.
Right.
Still very capable in terms of performance. But the one thing that's probably held many shooters back, if they're not really interested in a revolver, is perhaps the capacity thing, right?
That's an issue, yeah.
A carry revolver is typically 5 rounds, maybe 6 rounds. But probably the second thing is that reload, which is kind of a whole new ballgame for a shooter. And just a few minutes ago, you were doing a demonstration on the demo stage here on reloading revolvers. So just curious, maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of a briefer summary of what you just covered over there on the stage there.
Sure, and a quick follow-on to what you said about the popularity. Ruger and Smith & Wesson seem to be introducing new revolver models all the time, and their lineups are pretty darn extensive now. So
and you've also seen Colt is getting back into the game. Right. You're seeing Kimber, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So on the reloading issue, the reason I did the class here was because I felt that a lot of concealed carry classes, the people that show up revolvers, don't get the proper training on how to run them because it is more of a finesse firearm in terms of its operation reloading. For example, a speed loader is a gravity feed device, and if you're not working with gravity in terms of providing a straight path for the bolts to fall in the cylinder, for example, you're going to have a problem. You won't get it loaded. You'll get rounds hanging out, and the reload will be very slow and problematic. But if you learn to work with gravity, allowing the rounds to fall in the chamber, allowing the empty speed loader to fall clear rather than trying to pick it up and put it someplace, kicking the empty rounds far away from the cylinder of the gun forcefully so there's nothing to hang up, you'll see your speed improve quite a bit. And, you work from the same principle of slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So practicing with dummy ammunition, is critical in learning the operation. But once you have the understand the basics of it and how the best reloads work, because there's a number of different ways of reloading a revolver. Once you have that done, you can be very, very fast with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, certainly there's plenty of evidence out there of just how fast a person can be at handling and reloading a revolver.
Certainly.
Everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but many of you, I'm sure, are probably familiar with the video of Jerry Michalik, doing the world record shoot, with a reload in the middle there. I mean, you can't even see his hands move. They're so fast.
And the type of revolver that Jerry uses, and not to take anything away from him, aids in a rapid reloading. He's using a full moon clip with the short stubby cartridge, the 45, and you just drop it in and you go. There's the step of getting the empty speed loader clear from there is removed out of the equation.
Yeah.
Now, he would certainly, beat most anybody with a standard speed loader too, but that gives you a little bit of edge in the reload.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, he's certainly, obviously a very, very well-known competitive shooter.
Exactly.
So, what do you look for, or what do you maybe offer in terms of words of advice to someone that maybe you're teaching, instructing, or helping along the way as they are maybe looking at a revolver as their personal defense weapon? Both in terms of the revolver itself, maybe it's speed loaders and some of the different options that are out there for that, different types. So, where does one maybe get started looking into that?
Well, first of all, it's important to realize the advantages of revolvers, because when people are talking, generally they're not familiar with them. They always talk about the quote-unquote disadvantage of a low capacity, 5 or 6 or 7 shots. But they're missing the advantages of revolver. I like to say that it is very hard to make it accidentally go boom, but very easy to make it go boom when you need it to.
Yeah.
For example, there's the magazine can't accidentally be released slightly, or it can't be taken out of battery. It is going to run as long as you're strong enough to pull the trigger, and it's a good quality revolver, quality ammunition, it's going to run. That's one of the primary advantages. The other advantage I like to was pointing out today, and I've got an article coming out in Concealed Carry Magazine in a few more months about a direct contact shot.
Yeah.
When you're in close proximity to somebody where the fight's in close, where it's actually quite likely to be, you can press that revolver barrel against the opponent's body, head, any place that you get access to, and fire all 5, 6, or 7 shots, whatever it holds, without jamming. Because any locking breech type semi-automatic, whether it's a tilt barrel, whether it's a rotary barrel, you start pushing on the end of the muzzle of that gun, you're going to bring it out of battery, maybe to the point of a stovepipe jam. You may not get any shots off, you may get 1 off.
Yep.
And position you're in, grounded, standing on your head, holding it in every position the revolver's going to go.
Yep.
And it doesn't require a locked wrist to ensure that it's going to cycle properly.
Right. Exactly.
I also like when you're talking about the contact shots in close quarters, which concealed carry is often close quarters. The idea that, I run my students through retention drills.
Sure.
And a lot of times they're so close in with the gun that the slide hits their body, catches on a shirt or part of their jacket, and it causes a malfunction. Another thing about the revolver is, you can shoot it from under clothing, not worry about a jam.
Inside a purse.
Through a purse, and
or a coat pocket.
And it will still cycle. So, that's one benefit that a lot of people don't take for into consideration.
And while I carry semi-automatic on duty while I'm working, it's that 5-shot Smith & Wesson M&P 38 that's riding in my left pants pocket, and it's a hammer, a concealed hammer design.
Right.
At the sheriff's office I worked for, it's probably been 15 or more years ago, I was dispatched on a call during hunting season. A couple of deer hunters that may have been poaching on a property, may have been trespassing. As it turned out, they weren't. But I'm going to make an approach on a couple of guys standing there with shotguns in their hands, and my gun is holstered. So I thought, don't like those odds, and I pulled out my backup gun, put it in my coat pocket, just like you're saying. Walked up and talked to those guys calmly. They had no idea that they were being covered. And I was able to defend myself without offending them. And so it all went fine.
What's the word? Escalating the situation.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, we're in a law enforcement is a precarious position, and you can't go and do something like walking up with a gun approach when all you know is like, this might be a trespassing plate, But you can, that revolver allowed me to be ready, defend myself, and right through my uniform coat pocket if need be.
Well, it certainly has that application for you in that situation. Also has application very similarly for civilians.
Oh, sure.
A woman perhaps walking to her vehicle, sees someone, that's in the vicinity that's, for whatever reason causes her to have some alarm, and she can maybe, place her hand, at least have it on or near the gun ready to go.
Well, if she's wearing a jacket or a coat and she's worried before she leaves that door, there's no problem with taking it out and putting it in the pocket and walking in the car, wherever she's going with it in hand. Or walking the dog in an area that's questionable. Or, if you have that access to, if you're carrying it in a jacket, you're good to go. There's nothing to snag on there. You'll be able to fire all 5 shots. If you try to carry a semi-automatic pistol in the pocket, the slide's going to get tangled in coat material, and an exposed hammer 38. You might get a couple shots off, but again, you've got the hammer maybe getting bound up in the coat material as well.
like I said, this is good stuff for us to be talking about today. And it's something that I think we did an episode on the Concealed Carry podcast quite a while ago, Jacob and I, and kind of comparing revolvers and semi-autos, and we touched on some of this stuff. But it is something that just doesn't get talked about that often. Maybe what are some of the mistakes do you see that people might make that are shooting or perhaps carrying a revolver for self-defense?
Well, actually, I don't see too many mistakes per se because, like I said, it's hard to make a mistake with it. They're smaller mistakes I could say would maybe be, not carrying a reload at all, or carrying a reload in a place where it's inconvenient to get to. The revolver reloads always need to be kept on the strong side, your shooting hand side of your body for access, while semi-automatic pistol magazines are kept on the opposite side of your body for access, because you're reloading your semi-automatic with your left hand. On the proper technique, you're reloading the revolver with the right.
Yep.
So that's gonna make a difference there. I really don't see that many mistakes that people make, other than perhaps feeling like they have to choose the most powerful 38 special load, double plus P plus ammo, because they think that's what they need to do the job, and they don't.
Yeah.
And you start having problems with being able to control a gun, not wanting to go shoot it with that ammo because it hurts. It's advised, while they make very ultra lightweight 357 Magnum revolvers, I've never had any interest in shooting one. And I have fired them before, but it's not a lot of fun to go more than 5 rounns. And so you can load it with 38s, and have a much better shooting experience.
Absolutely.
And still being capable of dealing with the threat.
Well, there's another thing here too. We've touched on this a little bit too on the podcast and whatnot, that not only are we seeing maybe a renaissance or a resurgence somewhat of maybe some older platforms or older style platforms of guns, but also with ammunition.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of agencies now switching from 40 over to 9mm and vice versa. And a lot of that, I think, a lot of the benefits for doing so and reasons for doing so might be also similar, both as far as making the case for 9mm as well as making the case for 38.
Correct.
Because a lot of the same reasons are there. I mean, we're talking about two basically identical calibers, and what we've seen is an incredible advancement in technology where it comes to bullets.
Absolutely.
You can go pull all kinds of reports out there on the performance of 9mm. We don't see it so much in the 38, but I imagine it'd be very similar, that we're seeing better bullet construction, more consistent performance, appropriate penetration, and is doing it consistently. And that's really what we're looking for, is consistent penetration and performance. And so, I mean, I would think that's a pretty strong case, even though we tend to think of the 38 as being a little bit maybe underpowered. It definitely can perform very well.
Well, absolutely. And, you mentioned the 40, which everybody felt they had to have for many years, including law enforcement agencies, and people found out that one thing you didn't mention is controllability. A 40 is really hard on a novice shooter. This is why we used 9mm in my academy for 27 years that I ran that firearms program, because I wanted the shooters to be able to learn under a lesser recoiling gun, and they did much better with it.
Yeah.
The 40 is, you just want to put that in people's hands right away, and even law enforcement officers that are carrying it and qualified with it, they don't really enjoy it that much. And so, the 9mm is...
This guy over here, though, is a...
I carry a 40 because in my department we were issued 40 cal, but I was also assistant range master, and I know exactly what you're talking about as far as training police officers even. And when given the opportunity to go to a 9mm, a lot of them chose to do that, especially the ones that always, when requal came up, had some issues, right?
Yeah, on the edge of that,
and you're exactly right.
Their scores went up, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
But I mean, I don't care who you are. I know that there's some diehards out there that'll say, well, you guys are just being a bunch of wimps, Learn how to shoot the 40 or learn how to shoot a 45 or whatever it is. But the fact is, no matter who you are, like, nobody's going to argue with you that you can't shoot a 22 faster and easier, right, than you can more powerful guns. Same is true with this. If you can shoot a 40 really well, you can shoot a 9. Maybe not a ton better if you're a super skilled shooter, but you could definitely shoot it.
And if your capacity goes up a little bit, there's no harm in that. You have better controllability, more capacity. I mean, you're not giving up much. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Absolutely. Wow. So back to let's just because we have the opportunity,
Yes.
I think, to pick your brain on this. Can you walk us through, like, imagine we're doing sort of like a visualization technique here. For those that may not be familiar, you touched on, performing reloads on a revolver with your shooting hand.
Right.
Because your support hand is doing some other things with regards to the revolver and clearing the spent casings out of it. So can you walk us kind of through how you describe performing a reload on a revolver?
Sure, and I can refer to people can look up and find. There was a great article in the American Rifleman magazine last year, I believe, that had excellent pictures and step-by-step showing exactly what I'm talking about. So look that up for assistance too. But basically what happens when you're firing a revolver, say you fired your 5 shots and it's time to reload. Your right hand, shooting hand thumb, is going to push the cylinder latch, and your left hand is going to come in and start taking control of the handgun. Your fingers are going to come in and push that revolver cylinder open, and middle and index fingers, whatever gets on there, is going to hold that cylinder open. Control is then transferred to your left hand.
Assuming you're a right-handed shooter.
Yeah, of course. Right hand.
There's no lefties out there.
No, there's no lefties listed. So when it shifts control, you're also going to get your thumb on the ejector rod, because you'll need that. Having fired live rounds, the cases can expand and stick a little bit, so you're going to need extra leverage to get them out. So your thumb is there. You're going to take the revolver and into your left hand entirely and kick those empty rounds out while holding the cylinder open. Kick them down and up. Yeah. One of the mistakes people make, and it just seems natural because they want to look at the gun's operation, is to turn it sideways to kick those rounds out. Where they're going to get a extractor override and have an empty cartridge case sitting underneath the extractor star and having to pick that out and slowing the reload down, maybe endangering them. But by kicking away and letting gravity work, as I mentioned, the cartridges all fall free and clear. Once you're empty, the left hand, in this case, is keeping the cylinder open. While you're kicking those empties out, you should have been reaching either for the speed loader that's in a pouch on your belt or in your strong side pocket, kicking them out, getting that speed loader, and beginning the process to load. Gravity is where it comes into play here again, because you want to hold the muzzle down, almost directly perpendicular to the ground to let the rounds fall in. If you're trying to force this, it's like I said earlier, it's a finesse kind of thing, reloading like this. You find the left 2 charge holes or empty chambers on the left and line up to the live cartridges in the loader. Always hold the loader, if it's cylindrical loader, by I call the barrel, the cylinder portion. Never hold it by the knob. Because you can end up dropping those rounds everywhere else but in the gun when you most need to do that. So you let that slide down in there, and you turn the loader knob, or in the case of a Safariland loader, just push it all the way down in, and holding it down, let those rounds drop in. Once you've done that, just go ahead and close the cylinder. People want to waste an extra step by trying to pick out the empty speed loader and throw it somewhere. If you're flipping the cylinder up and closing, that's going to kick that speed load away, and you're reloaded again. But running through that very slowly and building up speed, you'll be amazed at how fast that you can get. And how reliable you get. So it'll become second nature to you.
What is a good reload time?
Oh my goodness, 5 seconds, 6 seconds. I mean, truly, you get as fast as people with a semi-automatic can, or, right up in that range. You're just not reloading as many rounds. And it's easy to flub a semi-automatic reload too. So they're not foolproof.
Absolutely.
So 3 to 5 seconds if practicing and getting up really fast. I think I'm somewhere in the 5 second range a good day. So
Great. Wow. That was a really good exercise. Thanks for walking us through that.
Sure.
Now, what would you say, though, since I did kind of joke about it, for a lefty? So you're shooting a revolver left-handed. I do know that kind of introduces a whole, another dynamic to performing that. I
think the principles are the same. If you haven't purchased a revolver yet and you are left-handed, I would recommend that you look at the Smith & Wesson M&P Bodyguard 38 Special, either the laser-sighted version, integral laser, or without. Now they've come without a laser on it if you want to save some money. And the important thing about that particular gun is that the cylinder latch release is on the top of the frame rather than on the side, so it's ambidextrous. So you can unlatch that easy with your left thumb or your right thumb. It works well for both. And it's going to take some adaptation. The principle would still essentially be the same. In other words, you should still be reloading with your shooting hand in the end, while if you're left-handed, reloading with the left hand and the loader there, while holding the revolver cylinder open with your right and letting it rest there.
Yeah, good stuff.
But that M&P bodyguard is, I don't know why somebody hasn't thought of that before, of repositioning the cylinder latch release.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we see a lot of adaptations on a lot of other guns in the industry to make things obviously a lot easier for lefties and righties.
Yes.
So when are you going to team up with a gun manufacturer and give your 2 cents in your brain and tell them, hey, make a left-handed revolver that the cylinder opens the other way?
Oh, I'm sure they're pounding at my door, waiting right now as we talk, waiting to talk to me about it. But I'm always happy. I talk with a lot of the industry people over time, and they're always interested. Not ideas from me, but from the consumers out there. You know, the reason we have so many guns today to select from is because the concealed carry movement. There wasn't, when only law enforcement essentially could carry concealed firearms on a regular basis. Well, when I started, you had a choice of a Chief Special, a 6-shot Colt, Walther PPK was another good compact pistol, or 25. That was about it.
Yep.
You know, and boy, when this boom came along, then it's given us so many choices and options, and it's just fantastic what's happening out there. And so it's benefited law enforcement and the civilian world.
Yeah.
But if it hadn't been for the civilians doing this, we would not probably be having this conversation right now.
So true. So true. Well, I think we're about hitting that. We've got maybe a couple more minutes here, but you know, Scott, I don't know, is there anything that you feel really passionate about that you'd like to kind of put out there? About anything, you know, firearms related, training related. I mean, maybe, obviously with a long career like yours, I think you probably know a thing or two about training and the importance of it. What would you say to, you know, the average gun owner out there, the average concealed carrier out there, as it relates to what would you hope to impress upon them as it relates to, you know, implementing in their training or whatever it is?
Well, here's the college professor part coming out.
Yeah.
Although a lot of the liberal college professors claim to believe in critical thinking these days, they don't exercise it, and it's always a part of my classes when I teach. Don't believe what I say just because I'm saying it. You know, check and verify. So if you're going to some kind of shooting training program and you're watching, it's like, boy, that really doesn't make sense to me. Why do they have me do this? Question that. Maybe not to them, but don't take that as this is the only way to do it. You question that and say, is this a better way? Or is this right? Is what they're saying? Does this make sense?
Right. And not only does it make sense, maybe, but does it make sense for you personally?
Right. Will it work for you?
Yeah.
And so there's stuff out there that can be downright dangerous, taught by people that have very little experience, that get other people in trouble. They think, hey, this is the way to do it, and it's really not. Does it make sense? Do you feel comfortable with it? Does it work for you? Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to, just because somebody's up there with the title and they're teaching a class, that doesn't mean that they're right about what they're teaching.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Do you do much dry practice?
Oh, yeah. On a regular basis.
Good.
And I have always. And in Revolver particularly, I think it really helps you master the trigger dry fire training. With an unloaded gun, I'm going to say again, don't put a hole in the TV set, but if you're home and you can do that, do that. You talked about Jerry. I had understood years ago that any time his friends would call, and he'd talk to them on the phone, they'd hear this click, 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 click in the background because he's always practicing his trigger pull. That's why he's a world champion. That's why he can do what nobody else can do. He's always practicing. Now, most people don't need to do that much or would be interested in doing that much, but it's a critical part.
But if you want to be world class, I mean, it's
you got to
eat, breathe, sleep, drink.
Exactly.
You got to really live it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. I could definitely see, especially with the Revolver being a platform, that I do think that for a lot of shooters in this day and age, if it's something that you're looking at considering seriously, there's a lot of benefit that can be had by doing some dry practice.
Right. That's you can be very, very accurate with a Revolver because the barrel is fixed. It's not a moving part of the action. And by mastering the double action trigger pull, which just takes some practice, you'll be an excellent shot with that. You'll be able to do the job.
What are some guns out there on the market right now that you see are doing a really good job as far as triggers go? There's definitely trigger can make a world difference in a double action revolver like that.
The Bodyguard 38 that I mentioned, Ruger's LCRs, has a very nice trigger pull, and I know
I agree with that.
they engineered the frame shape and some other things there to make that the best experience possible, because not everybody's equal in terms of hand strength and capabilities and all.
Yeah.
And so those two had some very fine triggers available. Ruger spent a lot of time doing that.
I absolutely agree with you on the LCR. In fact, I've mentioned that to a number of shooters, particularly like those with weaker hands.
Yes.
I do think that's a trigger as far as double action revolvers go that is pretty easy to manage, I think, for a lot of shooters.
Exactly. And, again, one thing we didn't mention, if not everybody can go to the range all the time in practice.
Yeah.
And certainly not the amount of time needed to be really proficient with the semi-automatic. But you can go and become capable with a revolver, capable of not having an accidental discharge with the revolver, and being safe with it much more quickly, and it does not need constant refreshing. It's just for people that aren't going to be able to go to the range a lot, don't want to necessarily practice a lot, because there's people out there like that. They're not all enthusiasts. They want to buy that gun for protection. The revolver's going to be a great choice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Scott, this has been a pleasure. A lot of great information and content together with you here today, so I really appreciate your time that you've made for us this evening, and wish you the best in all of your future endeavors.
Appreciate that.
We'll look
Thank
forward
you.
to crossing
Same to you
paths
guys.
again.